Hello, my name is Matt Talbert, Research Manager at ASCM, and I will be your host for today's webinar, Impacts of 3D Manufacturing for the Surgical and Medical Device Supply Chain. I'm joined by Dr. Maria Sherry, Research and Operations and Supply Chain Management in the Management Discipline Group at the University of Technology, Sydney, Dr. Katrina Skellerin, Postdoctoral Research Fellow at CBSI, Dr. Maruf Chaudhry, Lecturer at University of Technology, Sydney in Supply Chain and Operations Management, and Dr. James Novak, Postdoctoral Researcher in Additive Manufacturing at Deakin University in Victoria. It is now my pleasure to present Dr. Maria Sherry. Take it away.
Thanks, Matt. So, as Matt mentioned, my name's Moira, and I'm one of the lead researchers on this project. I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to be here and to hear more about this project. But before we start, I'll introduce you to the research team. First, we've got Maruf, who will took the lead on the methodology and the application of quality function deployment to ensure the robustness of the results. Katrina was the interface for data collection and facilitation on the qualitative workshop. And Jennifer and James provided domain expertise on additive manufacturing. So the way that we're going to have this structure the presentation is shown here. James will provide you with the overview of 3D printing and the application in surgical and medical device sector. I'll present the approach to defining the key challenges, opportunities and strategies and the alignment that we did with the SCORE model. Maruf will present the methodology and Katrina will present the key findings. But also, as COVID happened during the project, we also took the opportunity to develop 3 case studies, each of which highlight a significant aspect for supply chains and how work is done. Finally, we'll discuss the implications and the special role that the Association of Supply Chain Management and independent associations have in general in bringing together the surgical and medical supply chains to continue to discover and realise the benefits that this technology has in the sector. So James, over to you.
Thanks, Moira. Before we get to defining 3D printing, it is often easier to first describe the current way that most of our products are manufactured. They utilise what are called subtractive processes, whether that's starting with a solid piece of metal or timber and slowly removing material to expose a product within, or removing material to create a mold that can then be used to produce parts. This is called tooling, and due to the high cost of creating a tool, many of the same product must be manufactured from the same tool in order to recoup costs and turn a profit. Now we get to additive manufacturing processes, also commonly referred to as 3D printing, which in contrast produces an object from nothing by adding material in layers. It's a bit like stacking a deck of cards. This definition is quite broad. However, it's used to describe 7 broad categories of 3D print technology, which each function very differently, including the use of different raw materials like liquid resins, plastic filaments and powders, as well as different methods of material fusion, for example, heat or UV light. The process of building a product in layers presents several unique opportunities. Firstly, because there is no need for tooling, it is possible to manufacture one-off items, and even items that have complex internal structures that could not be produced through any other means. Within the medical industry, this means new opportunities to personalize products for the specific needs of a patient. For example, the acetabular hip cup shown on screen. Secondly, a unique capability is to 3D print assemblies of parts together in a single print. This is simply not possible with traditional manufacturing technologies and provides interesting opportunities to reduce assembly times or manufacture new complex products. Because 3D printers directly read machine instructions derived from a 3D computer model, this entire process from design through to manufacture is completely digital. For these reasons, from the medical device supply chain perspective, 3D printing holds great potential. I'll hand back to Moira to begin discussing the findings from our research.
Thanks, James. So the work that the team initially undertook involves searching existing literature, both academic and practitioner, in order for us to come up with this extensive list of challenges, opportunities and strategies, but also to understand how these were linked. I won't go through each of them here. They're available in the report, and Katrina will touch on them as she goes through the key findings. But through this extensive literature review, we validated the list that we found through a series of semi-structured interviews. So we got a number of practitioners and academics together, and we consolidated the list and prioritised the 10 most important. We also aligned each of them to level 1 processes on the SCORE model in order for us to try and understand whether there were key gaps in any of the key processes. What we found was that the enable area of the SCORE model is really an area that needs to be worked on in regards to this 3D printing for medical and surgical devices. So we were also aware that with additive manufacturing, as APIX incorporates it into the engineer to order process, that actually the design phase is something that's critical to the additive manufacturing. And it's an area I think that we need to spend a little bit more time on understanding how that can be incorporated into these level 1 processes. We also need to take further consideration on the actions that are embedded in the enable process, as this becomes a critical requirement to bring the supply chain together. So now I'll hand over to Maruf, who'll discuss the research approach and the methodology in more detail.
Thanks, Moira. Hi, this is Maruf, and in this slide, I will be presenting research method that we applied for our research. In this research, we used both qualitative and quantitative research method, that is mixed method research, because mixed method research improves reliability and validity of research findings. In qualitative method, as an approach, we used field study to identify context-specific challenges, opportunities, and corresponding strategies. For data collection, we used semi-structured interview from 10 respondents comprised of suppliers, manufacturers, and users of additive manufacturing-based products in clinical settings. For qualitative data analysis, we used content analysis technique. As an outcome of qualitative data analysis, we developed a list of challenges and strategies which are compared with the findings from literature review. In quantitative method, as an approach, we used survey research. For data collection, we used a structured questionnaire which was administered to workshop participants. For quantitative data analysis, we used multi-criteria decision making, that is MCDM matrix, and quality function deployment, that is QFD matrix. MCDM matrix was used for prioritizing and determining importance weights of challenges and opportunities. As MCDM is a very widely used tool for importance rating, I assume that the participants in this webinar are aware of the tool, and I am not going much detail of that. The main quantitative tool used for this research is QFD matrix, which was used for identifying most important strategies to avail opportunities and mitigate challenges. The outcome of quantitative research, we found the most important challenges, opportunities, as well as corresponding strategies to mitigate challenges and avail opportunities. Next. In this slide, I'll be presenting quality function deployment model and quality function deployment matrix. QFD is a powerful tool to address strategic and operational decisions in business. Application of QFD is very wide as it is applied to different fields for identifying opportunities, solving business problems, challenges, and mitigating business risk. Further, QFD provides a means of translating business problems and opportunities into suitable strategies to reach specific goals. Operationalization of QFD model. In QFD modeling, business problems or opportunities are referred to as what, and how to solve problems or avail opportunities are referred to as how, as shown in figure 1 at the right-hand side of this slide. In this study, challenges or opportunities of surgical and medical device supply chain are what's, and strategies to mitigate challenges or avail opportunities are how's. Now I will be discussing about QFD metrics. In our QFD metrics, as presented in the right-hand side of this slide, surgical and medical device supply chain challenges are presented in the first column of the first column from the left of the matrix. The second column from the left presents importance weights of the challenges, which is derived from MCDM matrix. We find that challenge number 3, 4, 5, and 8 have the highest importance weight. The first row at the top of the matrix presents strategies to overcome challenges. The numerical values at the middle of the matrix presents relationship between challenges and strategies. The last two rows of the matrix present relative importance values and absolute importance values. From the relative importance values, that is RI values, we find that strategy 2, 3, and 4 have the highest relative importance, which means that these three strategies should be implemented on prioritized basis. Similarly, we designed QFD matrix 2 for opportunities and corresponding strategies. Now I'm handing over to Katrina.
Thanks, Maruf. When analysing the challenges, we identified that all 10 of the ones that we focused on really focused on the gaps within the ecosystem, as opposed to specific supply chain processes of make, plan, source, enablers of the SCORE model. Within the ecosystem, strategies to address the challenges were framed around people, technology, and process. So when we're looking at the people side, we're looking at mobilising the social and the personable elements of this ecosystem. And within technology, mobilising the technological and physical attributes of the wider ecosystem. But within the process, it's around mobilising both the people and technical mechanisms for solutions for the ecosystem. And this is where the bulk of the challenges and the strategies that we identified were framed. So for example, as Maruf outlined, there were a range of challenges that we identified. And we're going to display 4 of the main ones today. So out of these 4 main challenges to the implementation of 3D printing in the surgical and medical device supply chain, the first one is the need for building and gathering evidence across the 3D printing industry and within the supply chain arena. So this is a top challenge, as you can see in that larger green light circle. So this is around building evidence for technical and product viability, plus the quality, and also the process improvement and the cost, so that the supply chain and businesses can justify 3D printing uses. Also, on top of that is the need to gather evidence to show the benefits of 3D printing versus subtractive manufacturing techniques for streamlining regulatory and the reimbursement and insurance landscapes. Building the business case was ranked the second key challenge. As patients demand new and best-in-class technologies, the need to keep supply costs down while providing more and better quality care will be a competing priority. For businesses in the supply chain, exploring the potential investment in 3D printing will be tricky to really get a clear picture on what the return on investment is, again, versus those subtracting manufacturing techniques. And for hospitals and the health system in the value chain, the business case to invest in 3D printing technology are limited. And this really impacts on how hospitals can look at the efficiencies for the health system, but also improving patient outcome. Thirdly, a lack of 3D printing standards and quality processes and knowledge that flow across the health system is a third challenge. 3D printing really suits the production of low volume and one-off patient-specific medical designs, but all hospitals and physicians approach design and quality very differently, rather than following a process flow which limits opportunity for scale. But if we standardize a 3D printing process in some aspects, particularly for clinicians, supply chain stakeholders will have the opportunity to provide a consistent customer value. Fourthly, limited social capabilities is a main challenge identified within the ecosystem. With new technology development comes a need for new knowledge and skills. And currently, in an Australian context, we have limited capability, particularly in printing and material technology, to meet increasing demand needs for speed in production for medical devices in particular. In addition, Australia has limited capability in post-processing techniques such as heat treatment, sterilisation, and clean and pack processes, which can lead to either a monopoly situation with large companies in Australia offering all these services combined, or the need to offshore these processes. On the demand side, there is also limited awareness in the health sector of the potential for 3D printing. So as you can see here, we've focused on 4 main challenges, which using the quality function deployment methodology, you can see how that we've ranked them. But in the report that you'll get a copy of, it goes into a lot more depth on all the challenges and strategies. But these are just showing some initial findings that really highlight the importance of mobilizing all the process mechanisms to address the challenges. 3 challenges, though, that really focus on this people technology process. If we start looking at connecting the ecosystem, really sharing knowledge as a key strategy, we can start to bring all these elements together to address the challenges. If we look at the process, as we mentioned, standardizing the process and really looking at how that quality and flow across the supply chain can really bring consistent value and some standardization to the process. And if we look at the technology, which is a significant issue, as it starts to improve over the years of technological improvement, we'll start to see speed and process and maintenance of quality to really improve the uptake of 3D printing across the supply chain. In the report, you'll be able to see that these top 10 challenges have a lot more depth to them in terms of the challenge descriptions and how that QFD methodology was related to really understand that highest correlation strategy and how to overcome the challenge. So when we look at the top ranked opportunities and strategies, we again see that all 10 are contained within the ecosystem of people, technology, and process. 3 main opportunities were identified for the implementation of 3D printing. Firstly, we look at personalised treatment as an opportunity. 3D printing is able to accommodate complex geometries compared to subtractive manufacturing, and thus offering a more patient-specific experience and ultimately improve patient outcome, which is a real positive for the health insurance sector and regulatory bodies across the value chain. Similarly, when we look at design flexibility, which is also correlated to personalised treatment, we can see that design and personalised treatment go hand in hand, as geometries and anatomical fit is really important for patient-specific devices and personalised treatment, so identified as 2 key top opportunities. And thirdly, the use of 3D printing for rapid learning and as a training tool for future surgeries and procedures. So younger scientists and practitioners have the opportunity to use 3D printing for learning and to really push the boundaries in medical technology fields. The other opportunities that were identified are also related here, and you'll be able to see them in the report, how they're ranked in terms of their level of importance. Within the people, process and technology framework, though, the main strategies to avail these opportunities, as you can see from really dark green circles, is the increased need to strengthen the collaboration across the ecosystem. This will avail the opportunities. For example, the sector in Australia is very fragmented. Advice and information is really hard to access, and industry are unsure how to build networks in the medical ecosystem. So the collaboration circle is very green if we can start to look at how we improve that as a key strategy. Technology improvements really focus on digitisation and how it can facilitate improved clinical decision support and enable health systems to design scalable, repeatable processes and workflows that optimise care delivery. As technology improves, 3D printing will lower the cost of goods, improve the capacity to produce mass customised product, and improve patient outcome. And finally, industry capability building and education. If we build technical capability in machine operation and post-processing applications, this building of social capability across these networks of stakeholders will build knowledge and long-term sustainable awareness and understanding of the needs of impacts of 3D printing. Again, when you're able to view the report, you'll be able to see how those strategies correlate to the opportunities and the importance ranking, and a bit more detail in what those opportunities and strategies pertain to. What we would now like to do, as Maura said at the beginning, is really showcase 3 case studies that demonstrate how 3D printing has impacted the medical and surgical supply chain during the coronavirus pandemic. And I'll let James present the first case study.
Thank you, Katrina. COVID-19 has been a real game changer for 3D printing. Whereas the traditional manufacturing technologies I described at the beginning of this presentation struggled to respond to the urgent and changing needs of countries around the world for medical supplies, 3D printing is flexible and does not require new tooling to be made to manufacture products. As an example, early in March, the company Isinnova in Italy collaborated with a local hospital to produce an emergency CPAP mask that could not be supplied through traditional global supply chains. A CPAP mask is attached to a ventilator and helps COVID-19 patients to breathe. A snorkeling mask from popular sporting goods store Decathlon was combined with a 3D printed valve, which is the yellow piece you can see on screen, that cost about $1 to 3D print on a cheap printer to solve this problem. The entire process from initial meeting with the hospital through to use of the CPAP masks by the first patients only required 3 days. Over the last 5 years in particular, cheap desktop 3D printers like those used by Isinnova have infiltrated manufacturing facilities, schools, universities and homes, making them widely accessible and ready to help during COVID-19. Beyond the immediate benefits to patients, this case study highlights issues for businesses to consider. Firstly, while Isinnova patented their valve design, they then gave this design away for free online so that anyone in need around the world could benefit. The file can be found in many locations online and downloaded by anyone for 3D printing, just like opening up your favorite music store and downloading a song. Secondly, the speed to market meant that the normal pathway to medical device manufacture was bypassed. The mask is not certified by regulatory bodies like the FDA. However, it highlights a decentralized way for businesses to utilize 3D printing and respond to needs in real time. Obviously, further research is needed in relation to regulation, as we identified in our research. However, we have documented millions of products around the world that were 3D printed during the pandemic, and it is clear that the technology has played a critical role in meeting medical product needs in lieu of traditional manufacturing. Katrina will expand on business model innovation next.
Another key example of how 3D printing has really impacted the medical and surgical supply chain during the coronavirus pandemic is really looking at how companies look at their business model innovation. So we looked at a company in Australia called Speed 3D. Now, when we think about business model innovation, we really want to ask, who is our customer? And when we look at the customer, what is the value proposition to that customer? So what do we want to offer the customer? How do we want to create that value, and what does that value chain look like? And then thinking, obviously, integrated in that is around the revenue model, and how will we make that business make money out of the product or the service to the value chain, but how will it be long-term viable? So how is this framework related to 3D printing in the coronavirus pandemic by Speed 3D? Well, firstly, they said, well, who is the customer? Who could this be targeted towards in this particular pandemic? Who could we think about? So they thought about schools, hospitals, ships, obviously, shopping centres, all those surfaces, areas where there was public entry and where they could address and really think about where a product could be applied. So once they identified who their customer could be, they looked at what some of their products, but what could they do quickly with 3D printing? And they thought about a copper 3D printed coating solution that could be quickly manufactured and actually applied to surfaces. What this did is that they could coat it onto doorknobs and touch plates with an antimicrobial copper, which was effective 99% of the time after 5 hours versus 72 hours with stainless plastic surfaces. So you can actually see what that value offered to the customer compared with a subtractive approach, which would probably have taken quite a long time. So when we look at the viability, what they thought about in terms of flipping their business model is that they could think about applying this particular product across other virus transactions and other bacteria that can be transmitted via touch. So a real example of how thinking about a business model and innovating that business model and thinking about how a particular crisis can change the 3D printing supply chain in the medical device sector. A final case study will be presented by Maura.
So thanks, Katrina. So the case study that I would like to present is one where an organisation pivoted their production from dental facilities to personal protective equipment. So Woolgoolga is a small beach town on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, about halfway between Sydney and Brisbane. The main business in the area is tourism and agriculture with the production of blueberries. But as the area went into shutdown because of COVID, it didn't stop one dentist in using his 3D printing facility to pivot and produce personal protective equipment. So his desire to do something helped, to help, coupled with his entrepreneurial skills, led him to learn about the design of the personal protective equipment. And once word got out that he was able to do this locally, he was approached not just by local hospitals and local facilities, but also further afield. Soon he was getting requests from interstate. He then decided to invest in another printer, looking to expand into test kits as well. I think what's important about this case study is 4 key things. First, the ease at which 3D printing enabled him to pivot his resources from printing one product in one industry to another, and the nature of the technology which enabled this distributed manufacturing in smaller locations, or in locations that would otherwise not be considered as suitable for traditional manufacturing. Third, the importance of knowing where 3D printing facilities exist, so that the mobilisation of these existing resources to cater for fluctuations in demand is critical, especially in emergencies or critical incidents. Finally, enabling skills and expertise that operate in one domain to be deployed in cross-industry situations is actually what enabled this rapid response in this particular situation. So if we think back and look at the implications of our research, much of it has to do with change management. And so we sought to explore some of the existing change management models, such as the iceberg. But as we reflected and as we discussed, we could see that this really wasn't the approach, that actually there was something different about the way that this change management should take place. And what we came to realise was the situation is more like a volcano. There are opportunities and promise of the technology has to deliver, and yet there are layers sort of bubbling under the surface, and yet there are layers of work that need to be done in order for this to be realised. And the first layer that is needed is for the supply chains to be able to come together. And so we see this critical role for independent associations and associations such as the Association of Supply Chain Management to really bring members of the supply chain together and to facilitate this collaboration through projects, and in order to create, to document and to make available this evidence that can be used to develop robust business cases. And in that, following these business cases in order for them to be given the best opportunity for funding. And through this process, where we can, again, document and make available the success of implementations, will enable the opportunity of additive manufacturing to be realised and erupt and be seen further afield. So that's the conclusion of the presentation. And again, I'd like to thank you for attending.
All right, thank you so much for taking the time to present your amazing research today. This is part of the ASCM grant research program. The final report will be posted on the ASCM research page. If you have any questions about this study, please send an email to research@ascm.org. I will pass it along to the researchers. And that concludes today's webinar. Thank you so much for your presentation, and thank you for attending. All content and materials included in this ASCM online event are the property of ASCM and are protected by the United States and international copyright laws. All rights are reserved.